Everybody's bottom looks different. I've hit a few bottoms in my day. One in particular was with drugs and alcohol. I had to hit that bottom of not being able to maintain a job, not being able to maintain a relationship, or even keep a dollar in my pocket.
Hello and welcome to Holistic Circle Podcast, Spiritual Conversation. My name is Philipp Kobald. We are reaching out to people who are passionate about spreading light, love, and joy. And I'm happy here today from Vancouver, Kimberly Flear. Hello and welcome, Kimberly.
Hello, Philip. Thank you very much for having me.
Wonderful. You said Sunshine Coast, so that sounds always good. That's a great marketing start.
It indeed it is. Don't be fooled though. I do live in the rainforest, so the sunshine this time of year is actually quite rare. We do tend to get quite a bit of rain in the winter season. However, we are south facing, so on the beautiful days, it is incredibly beautiful and incredibly sunny.
See, there you go. A guy like me who don't know much about Canada always thinks that you're during winter, like 6 meters of snow is like minimum. That's how I imagine Canada.
Yeah, no, you're on point, and a lot of people have that conception as well, that Canada is very cold winters and lots of snow, and it certainly is in many parts of Canada, but being on the West Coast, we are part of the country that doesn't see those kinda cold temperatures and those centimeters of snow, so
Wow. All right. That's we learn something as we grow.
cool.
And even if it's geography, happy to learn anything. Okay, wonderful. So, right, Kimberly. Usually I start my podcast with a small introduction so people get to know who you are and what you do,
Sure.
and then we'll take it from there.
Okay. It's funny, small is not something that comes when I go to articulate where I come from and what I do. It's a long-winded story with lots of flavors and colors and so on. So I'll try and keep it short. I come from a very small town in Northern Ontario, middle-class family. I spent 27 years in the restaurant industry where I was a server, I was a bartender, I was a sommelier for a little while, and I was also a high-functioning addict. I spent about 25 years struggling with active addiction, and in September 2020, I gratefully got sober. After moving, I've lived in many places all over Canada. I lived in New Zealand. I've lived in Australia. I was constantly running from myself, but no matter where I went, there I was. So I finally took the leap in September 2020. And that's where the deep dive into healing and spirituality and these kind of modalities and practices really started to become very real in my life. So, in the 4 years since embarking on this journey, I came out the gate pretty quick and I now am in the field of helping others. So, I do that in multiple capacities. I live a very quiet life out here in a little cabin in the woods. I've got the ocean at my front door, I've got the forest in my back door. So, I've managed to really cultivate a very quiet, peaceful life that's allowed me to look at the parts of myself that I was running from and that I was burying with alcohol and drugs all of those years. And of course, like many of us who do come from a path of addiction, it was the childhood trauma, it was the PTSD, it was the bullying at school, and all of those things began to surface as I let these habits go. And so now, as I embarked on this healing journey, I gratefully have been able to create a coaching practice in a couple of different areas where I'm able to support and help other people who are on the similar path.
I guess you said cabin in the wood, so it's like an online thing mainly.
Yeah, I do mainly, mostly a lot of the coaching one on one and group coaching that I do is online. However, I do some work in person with workshops and trainings because I took all the experience from the restaurant industry that I had and I now help that industry as well. So some of that does happen in person.
You come now. I would have made a stupid joke, especially when you work with bears. You can do a lot of it's a real life coaching.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stupid joke. I'm so
It's
sorry.
okay. I was gonna follow up the stupid joke with something even funnier, and the trees were my practice clients for a long time. I have built a special
Whoa,
relationship with the
that's
trees.
not a joke. I'm a big
No,
tree hugger. So
are you?
there you go.
Yes.
Trees, don't say anything bad about my trees. I love them.
No,
I'm
me
very
too.
personal about trees.
I knew that we'd have some synergies here for sure.
Every time I go through my land and then I a little bit tap the trees. You did good this year. You gave me a lot of fruits. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Other trees, I'm like, better next year.
Yeah, beautiful. It's really cultivating that connection with nature. We are nature and we are a part of that natural flow of life. And so they are also living, breathing consciousness, as are we. And so I find a deep therapeutic
Well, I
value in
make a
that.
point when bears are involved. With
Yeah.
trees,
Yeah.
carrots, yes,
Mhm.
bears, oh,
Yeah, no, I've had a few close encounters with bears, and I certainly prefer the trees. But I think that there's a kind of a misconception with bears as well, especially black bears. They tend to be just afraid of us as we are of them, believe it or not. Don't
I
like to
heard that.
stick
I
around.
hear all of it, but I don't
Yeah,
trust it.
of course.
Before we go into your work more deeply, I know there's a bigger story why you are where you are and how you came to this cabin. So this is quite a story on its own. So maybe let's couple of minutes. I'm so sad that we don't have like a surrounding camera because the way I can feel your energy and talking, it must look breathtaking outside of your
What
place.
I'm what I'm looking at right now is very breathtaking. The cabin is all windows and it's all we've got cedars, we've got fir trees, we've got alder. It's a variety of trees and thick forest. And of course, the ocean, which is my medicine
Right.
as
But
well.
you decided this podcast don't need more subscribers. I'm not gonna sit the other way around, so people can watch
Well,
it.
I can easily turn the camera if that's something that you would like to see. Is that something you would like
But
to
at least
see?
at the end, so people
Okay.
stay until the end of the podcast. It's
Or
the
I
white
think
shark thingy.
that's a
We will
beautiful
talk more
incentive.
about.
That's a beautiful incentive.
So basically, the way you make money is you just turn your laptop around and then you charge by the minute to just watch the view and tranquility, the serenity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting you say that. I have done some work with the camera the other way with the background, but to be honest, the lighting actually is more beneficial to have the natural light on my face.
I'm just
Yeah.
being silly. Christmas time is coming, so I have to
No,
use the opportunity.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Tell us how you came to this wonderful cabin of yours.
And so it is quite a wild story. And so before I chose to get sober, I was living in Vancouver. I was living in the downtown east side. And about 2 months after I had decided to quit drinking and using, I knew I needed to leave that area. And so I moved to a quiet little place in North Vancouver, which was in the forest. It was really beautiful. I had a really great job and we were in full swing of COVID. It was in 2021. I was under a lot of pressure. I felt the pressure of everything and everyone. And so I made the radical choice to quit my job. I sold everything I owned. If it didn't fit in the Mini Cooper, it wasn't coming with me. And I found a 1971 Airstream trailer up in the forest here on the Sunshine Coast. I moved in September and I lived in it over the winter. I tapped into the river for my water. I didn't work. I was alone. And I did what a lot of people, I believe, not only really wish they could do, I feel like it's something that everybody should experience in their life, and that's really to go inward and to trust that you're safe and you're protected. And I knew I had to do that kind of work. I knew that there was a lot I wasn't looking at, and I knew that if I really wanted to embark on like this kind of journey and manifest and create my reality intentionally, I had to clear out the space. I had to clear out the muck, so to speak, the parts of myself that the shadow work, we can really just encompass it as the shadow work. And I'm quite a fearless person. I left home when I was 15. I have been a solo warrior my whole life. I've never married. I never had children. And so a lot of things I experienced and traveled on my own. A surprise for most people who know me that I took this leap and left the city and left my job and did this kind of wild survival adventure for 6 months. And it was wild living in the forest. And I wouldn't change it for a second because I was able to create the space. I was able to purge what was keeping me stuck in habitual patterns and behaviors, a lot of journaling, a lot of meditation. I was introduced to breath work. So I started really like understanding these modalities, understanding that we are energetic beings and that if we can once I understood that concept and that reality, I was able to work with it. And I was able to really understand when I wasn't using it to move forward. Like I could feel the resistance. I got to know my body. I got to know my thoughts. I wasn't distracted. I also deleted all social media. So I wasn't scrolling. I didn't have Netflix. And I think that's the biggest thing that we don't realize is we can't create from a place where we're full of other information or full of distraction. And I knew that. And so that's how I embarked on this journey. And so after the 6 months of living in the cabin, spring came around, the flowers started to bloom, the sun came out, the birds were shining, and I was so ready to get out of that trailer and live in a structure. There was really bad snowstorms that winter and windstorms, and I had mice and whew, it was wild. And so I was ready to come out. And so April of 2022, I came out of the trailer, and I had been dreaming about a little cabin in the woods. I would get into meditation and I would dream about it, and I knew that it was here. And I was looking for a place for a few weeks and I couldn't find it. And I thought maybe I'm just meant to stay in the trailer. But I was like, I don't think so. I was looking at all these other places and nothing felt right. Nothing felt like it was where I was meant to be. And so I thought, I guess I'm meant to stay in the trailer. Like, I really trust that things will come. Trust the process is something I've really embodied and that spirit is guiding this path for me. And about, it was the 26th of March, and I had to re sign the lease for the trailer on April 1st or move out. And I picked up my lease and I didn't sign it. I had a bath that night and I came out and I came onto Craigslist, which is, I don't know if you have a Craigslist where you are, but a platform where people post ads for apartments and houses and things. And I went on, and it was an hour before this cabin had been posted on the internet. And I, of course, straight away, as soon as I saw it, I knew that was it. And I had emailed the landlord right away, and I came to meet him the next day, and we instantly connected, and the rest is history. And I've lived here almost 3 years, and it's beautiful. It's peaceful. And there isn't a day that I don't wake up and give thanks for all of that journey that I just shared with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's of course exactly as you said, that there are so many people who have the same dream as you, but obviously have not found the motivation or the necessity, or I always say like hit the wall where you then literally cannot go any further. There is nothing further. You either now find a new path, left way or right way or whatever, or any other way, but literally further there is not. And this is when a lot of things are happening in spirituality. I think a big group of people who come into spirituality have hit this wall at some point in their life. And it's not the only way, but it's a big portion. And when you look at my last now 20 podcasts, I say 16 of them are stories about somebody who hit the wall at some point or the other, and then overcame it, made a big transition, figure out that there's a whole different world that they were not aware of before. I always call it a hamster wheel. One as long as you're in the spiral, right? You don't see that there is so much going on left and right. And once you're aware of it, you wanna, live the dream. You wanna be out there, you wanna enjoy it. And you definitely usually don't want to go back into the negative spiral and feeding the dragon, right?
Totally. I completely resonate with that. There isn't a cell in my body that's the same that was when I was using, and everybody's bottom looks different. I've hit a few bottoms in my day. One in particular was with drugs and alcohol. I had to hit that bottom of not being able to maintain a job, not being able to maintain a relationship, or even keep a dollar in my pocket. It consumed and took everything material from me, and it took that devastation for me to finally, I was 90 pounds soaking wet doing some pretty hard drugs for breakfast. And it took that darkness for me to finally want to start crawling towards the light.
Yeah. Well, what I wanted to say is that exactly stories like yours, even if there are so many people listening out there who maybe have not hit the wall, but they feel the drag, they feel all of it. Maybe they will not go into the forest like you being that brave. I mean, not many of us have the balls to do it, but just to listen to these stories over and over again, I think there's healing in listening to that kind of a conversation. I really truly want to believe that there's healing in listening to this, where we're talking and saying, hope must stay alive, and people's pokingness and willingness to change, like getting poked a little bit with a stick, that change is possible and we can do change, we can perform change once we make a journey inwards. that is a rewarding path to go. So thank you so much from this perspective for sharing it, because that's exactly what people need to hear. Now, if you may, just tell a little bit now the people you work with, what is their background? What are their needs? A little bit to understand where you now link all of this with where you help people.
Absolutely. Change is inevitable. Everything's always changing. We just have to get in alignment with it because if nothing changes, you know? And so I hope that, yeah, my story can inspire others. And that's something that I take with me in my work. Because it's not just the schooling and education that I have, it's also the lived experience that I bring forward. And so I work in a couple of different capacities with individuals. I work with women who are not only just in recovery, but are also spiritually curious and wanting to tap into their innate ability to create the life that they so desire. So, whether we're tapping into their strengths and their values and looking at what it is that they want to create and what it is that's blocking us from creating that reality. I also hold
Which
workshops.
techniques are, is it conversational? You do
Yep. So I do
meditating, chanting,
Yeah, so I do a couple of different things. It depends on really what the individual is looking for and what resonates with them. I
right?
do have a few tools in my belt that I use. Yeah, coaching is one, just motivational interviewing, looking for forward movement, goals to set, creating roadmaps and visuals for ourselves. And then the tools that I would use could be mindfulness and meditation. I'm a really big fan of EFT tapping. It's a beautiful practice that people can use themselves or be guided through to shift those energetic blocks because I think it's really important that we acknowledge those energetic blocks. Talk therapy is amazing, but if we're not actually addressing the physical energetic side of what is still trapped and not processed, our nervous system has carried that trauma with us since childhood, which is manifesting into these unwanted behaviors and patterns. And so I really love to use those practices to address them. I'm a journaling, EFT tapping, meditation. I love to do group work. So that's the one container that I work with people in is that side. And then I also do work with the industry of restaurants and hospitality. So I have an organization where I took everything that I did. So I did, as I mentioned, 27 years in the restaurant industry. And throughout that experience, I struggled immensely with addiction. There wasn't a lot of support for people like myself and many others who are struggling in that industry. And in 2021, I lost a friend, and that really sparked something in me to realize there's a gap in the system of care in that industry. And so I also started an organization to start supporting people either through one-on-one coaching or the actual employers. So starting to go into the workplaces and starting to take responsibility in implementing policies, implementing orientation packs, just allowing people to know that the resources, support are there. Because as I mentioned, there's a big gap in the system and it's also drowning in stigma. And
How's
so
the
I love to be
response?
that voice. Yeah.
How's the response from the company owners? Are they welcoming? Are they skeptical? How does that go?
A little bit of a mixed bag at the moment. So this has been my first year of operating this organization. I do come up against resistance because this is a culture shift. This is something that has been widely accepted for far too long. And so it's not just about going in and having workshops talking about addiction and mental health. It's really about shifting a culture. And so that takes a lot of willingness and dedication to want to make those changes. And we're talking about very vulnerable and sensitive topics here that make people a little bit uncomfortable. It's a little bit disruptive, and I'm really nurturing that. And then I have other organizations, employers who are very much open to these conversations and willing to start implementing this kind of initiative.
That's amazing. And of course, you will need a very long breath if one institution want to change, but it's very rewarding if one decides to stick with it. So
Absolutely. And the numbers, I have tools that I use to calculate how much these kind of issues are costing organizations. The statistics not only are the statistics of the individuals who are overdosing and who are struggling and who are reporting mental health issues, the statistics on the bottom line for the businesses are beyond what people I even think comprehend. So it's a win, really. It's just going to take some time and some nurturing and conversations like this to really get people to open their eyes and start to want to make that change.
so if I understood correct, the main field is trauma and addiction that you mainly work with people, and of course helping them to ask life questions and things like that that goes along naturally with those kind of quests.
I really believe that I meet people where they're at. I don't like to be put in a box. Right? Now I stay within my lane, right? I'm not a registered licensed therapist. So if we start to go down that path, that's where I pull out my resource belt. And I'm very resourceful. I have a library of resources to help support people if it's out of my capacity. But in regards to the coaching that I do, the transformational coaching, the recovery coaching, it's very forward movement. After spending so many years in the restaurant industry, I have a gift of kind of hearing things what people don't say, right? I'm very good at reframing and allowing things to be seen in a different perspective because I believe that's where growth happens. That's where those aha moments happen. And people are able to make those small transformational shifts when they're able to see things in a different light. And that's where I am. I'm the guiding light for transformation, and I really like challenging people's limiting beliefs and old patterns because that's, like you said earlier, that hamster wheel, that's what keeps us in that hamster wheel, and once we start to challenge them, we're able to begin to cultivate new shifts in our life,
Yes,
and it's a
pattern
process.
shifting. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Well, so that's it's all very clear now. And I think now we've started very nicely. But just before I go to the hard question, so to say, we have to tap into that because it's why we're here, I guess, by the end of the day. But let us just quick. I'm so curious now, where you're living right now. Is there a community? Do you have neighbors? Is there kind of social life? And is this also like a community of individual people like you? Do you have a lot of neighbors who have also came there to enjoy a certain tranquility? Or just give me, I want to a little bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a small community. I'm out so the Sunshine Coast runs for about, give or take, 80 kilometers. The southern part of the coast is a little bit more populated. There is a town there that has a shopping center and things like that, but up where I'm in, it's quite remote. I have neighbors, but there's a lot of trees in between us. So there's a lot of privacy. There is definitely a large spiritual community here. Again, I really feel that we are guided to align. Our lives match the frequency that we are at. And so if we really understand that concept and that reality, then there is no doubt that I am surrounded by people who also do this kind of work.
You managed to build connection or network in that area.
Yes, I have. And very easily, like they've just naturally synchronistically come into my life. I don't have a very large group of friends. I'm very particular about who I give my energy and who I spend my time with. After the road that I've traveled and the tens, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people I've met on my journey, I now really am I'm quite particular about who I even share my story with or come online with because we are energetic beings. And right, I believe that everyone comes on our path to either teach us something or there's work to do together. So the community that I have built here has been very supportive. I have a circle of women that I do breath work with. Every season we get together as a community and I do breathwork circles. I host workshops. There's new moon celebrations and full moon celebrations. And I have a drum that I went to an elder ceremony with an elder and made a drum, a handmade drum. And so I'm very in tuned with that. That's my new way of living.
Beginning.
It is
Yes.
indeed, yeah, and that's when
Yeah.
I said earlier, there's not a cell in my body that's the same as what was.
The reason I asked because what I've learned from my spiritual work as a teacher is that you always have to have a very intensive inward process where you do a lot of work and so on. But once you have done it, you must have a social component. You don't need to necessarily to share or whatever, but there must be an outward motion. So this flips back and forward. I have come to understand this is a very valuable part of spiritual growth to work in yourself, to do a lot of things, and then also have the other side, the ceremony, ceremony, drumming together. No matter how simple, it helps to manifest the work one has done inside and to bring it to outside, and especially if one is a therapist. Well, it's very important to keep challenging oneself and to socialize. This is very important. So that's why I wanted to feel a little bit your
Yeah.
lovely community.
That's really important that you bring that up because that's something that, as someone who embarked on recovery, I did not resonate with AA or NA, which is very community orientated and very connected, very connection orientated. And when I came out of the trailer, that was the one piece that I thought I missed. It was a very solo journey for me. But now I understand why I had to go through that to align with the community that I've now aligned with, because my heart space is so full and so full of unconditional love. And I have found people that enjoy the same modalities and the same practices I have, but I don't believe I would have found that if I just followed the one pathway of the fellowship.
Basically, some people coming into that addiction from a point of loneliness exactly because they need to cover that loneliness. And so AA is an amazing program for a lot of people to learn a little bit, open up step by step, and building this. And this is an insanely good program. But when you're like over social or too
Yeah,
much, then of course AA most likely is maybe not the best choice, but it is the minority that people come to those conditions. But that's
absolutely.
just
Yeah.
a small reflection on what you said.
And that's
Because
a great reflection. Yeah.
but I have a reason why I did it, not
Mhm.
without a reason. Because I'm so curious, I would like to take on it. Do you, because you said that this job as a service person, working with millions of people, you said there are millions of energies, and there's well-known addiction and burnout and other things in the service industry. Most people think because it's long hours and it's bad paid, so everybody makes it very easy to explain it, but nobody looks at what you just said is like a lot of energies. So would you like to say something on that?
That's really interesting. Absolutely. I don't think that's even acknowledged in that industry. If I reflect back on the 27 years and 3 countries, 24 restaurants, that's a lot of people I've come into contact with. And so when you can actually understand energetic, the soon as you have a conversation with someone or you're in someone else's energetic field, you are now attached to that energy.
Yes.
Yes. So I don't think that's even acknowledged. And thank you for shining a light on it because I think that even if I had known that 15 years ago, if I had done these energy practices, it would have saved me a lot of angst. That's where really working with people and understanding not only how to clear their energy field, whether it's on a daily basis after each shift, but also protecting our energy too before going into certain circumstances or walking into places with all of these people.
Exactly what you said. It has not been acknowledged. And it is the problem is it's not scientific in a sense. If you take
Yeah.
100 waitresses, there are maybe 20 who are hypersensitive, who are just very empathetic people. And this job is going to kill them, right? Because as you said, you're stepping into people's energy. But we were just a couple of weeks ago sitting in a restaurant with a bunch of friends and just a regular group. And there's nothing I can do about it. I am quite sensitive and quite, I have quite open channels, 30 years of meditation, what can you do? And I was just minding my business and I could feel coldness from the back of the room. You just feel it all of a sudden, right? And I was thinking, can I ignore it? Can I not? We have friends here with everything. And of course, I started to open my ears, and there was a boss basically saying bad things to a saleswoman. She was whatever, not seeing a table. I don't know what was going on, but she was hurting, and he obviously couldn't stop. It was non appropriate, but it was not like shouting or crazy, but it was clear, very clear, right? And then I asked on the table, guys, don't you think this is really not okay? This place, why does he treat her like this in front of everybody and this and that? No one on the table were aware whatsoever, right? That she's hurting right now and that she feels pain, that she's uncomfortable with the way she's treated, right? So that's what I'm saying. From 100 people, maybe 20 have it. But once you have it, I felt the coldness. I felt her pain. I was also uncomfortable. Yes, I can work with it. Of course I can. I mean, I know what I'm doing, but it's there. And so if you do it all day long, stepping into marriages, couples that fighting, children who are staring at the phone because they're lonely, because parents don't give a damn.
Mhm.
Just basically guys with toxic energy, women with toxic energy, and you're the buffer, right?
Yeah, thanks for sharing the story. That's something that is only too common within the industry. I've seen it many times. And the coping strategy for a lot of us was drugs and alcohol because it was so acceptable, because it numbed it. It made us forget about what it was, whether it was a guest or workplace bullying. And honestly, something too that's not addressed very often in the industry is that it tends to attract a lot of people who come from adversity and trauma because of the accessibility. It doesn't conform to society's normal rules of what a 9 to 5 job looks like, right? So it's already attracting that kind of rebellious energy, the kind of misfit, so to speak. Yeah, these things are certainly not addressed. And I think with the way we're going as a society, now is the time to start addressing them. And I couldn't think of anything else I would rather put my time and energy in is addressing these topics and helping those that are willing
And
to
that's
accept the help.
exactly why I told the little story, because I think what you do, if you go to those waitresses, if you go to these people and just make them aware there is energy and you give them nice little stories and they see you are affected by it. And once you know that, once you're consciously aware that this is what's happening to you, that's why you're feeling down all of a sudden, because there's a guy who is so negative, you starting to develop strategy once you're consciously aware, because unfortunately our school does not teach energy flow. We just pretend it doesn't exist, and that's why we are in this predicament, because it's there, nobody wants it to be there, right?
Yeah, you can't see it, smell it, taste it, or touch it.
Or you can, if you
And
want.
okay, a high percentage of individuals will say that they can't smell it, taste it. It's hard to comprehend. But I believe there's so much power in educating individuals on these kind of topics and then giving them the tools and the resources to protect themselves, to have different coping strategies rather than drugs and alcohol or scrolling or whatever it might be, right? We're in a society full of dopamine, fake dopamine, and so on. That's my mission, and that's why I'm here. And whether I do it within the restaurant industry or I do it one on one with individuals, mainly women, I certainly would never close the door on a male. I do have male clients, but I seem to attract a lot of female, middle aged female women who are looking for purpose, looking for something else, knowing that there's more out there. And I think that's a really big part of my journey. I knew that this existed. I just had to get out of my own way. And as I said earlier, removing the distractions was a really big piece.
Well, unfortunately now we have to come to the tough part, and we have to talk about the dragon and darkness and how to feed it and how light falls into the perspective, right? Because that's something that is a crucial conversation to have in our day and time, because so many people are in a negative spiral. They are, is it, as you said, alcohol, drugs, shopping addiction, sexual addiction, whatever. People are, or basically aggressive behavior addiction, or whatever it is, whatever wording we use, people are in very negative spirals because they're not in sync with themselves. So tell us a little bit about those spirals and why is it so people are so happy feeding the spiral in their unhappiness, being happy in unhappiness, enjoying the self destruction, how good it feels to feed the dragon. Tell us about the dark side before we come to an end with light, I hope.
Wow. So the question you're posing essentially is what's keeping people in the dark? What do I believe that are keeping people in the dark?
What makes it so pleasurable, enjoyable? What are the mechanisms behind, if you have thought about it? And most likely you have.
Yeah, I think there's a massive fear of feeling what's going to come up when they actually remove that distraction. It's not pretty. I'm not going to sugarcoat this at all. The time that I have spent, and even today, I still have a little bit remaining that comes up in my own journey, residual. So I think the biggest thing is the fear of actually feeling what's coming up. People are afraid to look, number one, at their own shit, at their own shadow, because it involves feeling deep seated emotions. We have come from a society where we have been suppressing our sadness. We've been told not to be angry, that it's not good to feel angry or sad or these so called negative emotions. If we actually reframed them and viewed them as a portal that we could use to actual authentic joy and authentic happiness. But it's really scary for a lot of people um, to embark on that journey. And you have to want it. You have to ask yourself, you have to sit with yourself and be honest with yourself.
I am a lifelong fascinated by the pleasure of self-harm. It is the big miracle of my life how much we humans enjoy hurting ourselves
Yeah.
and what passion and power we develop doing eating the total wrong things, meeting wrong friends and knowing while we're doing it, this is the wrong place for us to be. And once you start doing the right thing, it's almost like our mind is against us. Our body becomes our enemy. It's almost like the whole world has inspired to stop us doing the right thing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I almost picture it as like when you start to do the work. So, number one, you have to decide enough is enough. Because I want to say something, like I mentioned earlier, I can sit here and say society has programmed us. We've been projected all this fear and so on and so forth. And yes, that is true. So, therefore, there's an element of it. It's not our fault, but it's our responsibility, right? So, it's our responsibility to begin to make the choice to want to change. And once that decision has been made, I almost picture it like we're stirring the pot, right? So now you're going to start, as I mentioned earlier, challenging those limiting beliefs. You're going to start to become aware of the mental loop that is keeping us stuck in the same perpetual cycle that we don't want to be in. Self-awareness has got to be the number one antidote. Without self-awareness, we can't get anywhere. You have to become aware of what's going on mentally, physically, emotionally, and then we can begin the process of taking small steps towards the light to better improve our lives. I really want to highlight small steps. I think a lot of people, especially coming into the new year, they want to change everything about their lives, right? They want to meditate, they want to work out, they want to eat better. And the list goes on. And what essentially we're doing is setting ourselves up for an unsuccessful result. But if we can start to cultivate little steps, and that's really what I work with mainly in my practice with individuals, is starting with small steps, choosing one thing every day because consistency is key. You have to build that muscle, that energetic muscle, right? You've been meditating 30 years. You're that muscle is strong, like you had shared about your restaurant experience. That shows the strength and your openness to receive and to be aware. And so those that are just beginning on their journey essentially just have to start with one small thing. So we choose that thing. And as we do it every day for 5, 10 minutes, we celebrate. That's building the muscle. I had a conversation with someone who recently who was struggling with a sugar addiction, and she was really happy and proud that she didn't buy cookies that day. And she only celebrated for a couple of seconds and then moved on to something else. And I brought her back because if she had purchased the cookies and had eaten them, she would have spent probably hours, if not a day, shaming herself, feeling guilty, being mad at herself. But she only spent 3 seconds celebrating that she didn't buy them. Let's flip that on its head. And our body thrives when we celebrate our little wins. And as we celebrate those small wins, we start to build capacity, we start to build strength, and then we build on top of that. So we do that one practice, then we build on another practice, right? This all didn't happen overnight. It was multiple steps and practices and falling and getting back up and knowing that it's okay to fall and get back up. But the key is getting back up. And if you want to cry, if you want to go in the forest and scream at the top of your lungs, do it. Because that's energetic releases. We have to let it out. We have to channel out these energies that have been suppressed for so many years. And so giving ourselves the space and giving ourselves permission to do that's healing. That's the work. I could talk about this forever. As you could tell, I get really passionate about it. It's like this beautiful gift that we all have access to. And I want to share it with the world, but only if you're willing. Again, we have to be willing. We have to say enough is enough. How bad do you want it? Get a journal and start reflecting on that piece
That's a good
alone.
one.
Yeah.
That's a very helpful idea. This is one of the things that actually really work a lot
Yeah.
because we are so much suppressing. A journal is a great idea. And working with people like you, once we hit the blocks, once we hit the walls, to find a therapist like you who's been there, who worked through it, found her way out. That's the inspiration that people need. And I'm very positive about your work with the salespeople, because service people, because it's something that you truly understand. And it sometimes is the total key, right? When you so much understand, you speak the language, you know what can work on any given time and what not. And that is such a vantage point which nobody else has. And maybe you will be writing books about this, especially for people in the service industry. You will make more workshops, we will make more programs. And I see a niche, and that's the key in for everyone. So from this perspective, we learned a lot. And next time we will talk about energy transition between grumpy customers and people, because it's real,
Yes.
it's not acknowledged, it's not paid. Nobody gives a damn that those helpless people, not even knowing that they are taking on their back heavy weight of grumpy customers. And so that's my message. Don't be a grumpy customer, because these are human
Absolutely.
people in the service industry.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you so very much. Everybody who wants to meet you there, here down there are links, informations, everything. Get in contact. Everything is here. And it was a great pleasure seeing you. And I only do another podcast with you if you're sitting outside with the trees and the view. That's the only way I'm going to come back again.
Amazing. Let's do that next time. We'll do a summer recording and we'll do it with the bees and the bears and the birds and the trees, all of it. I would absolutely love that.
Me too. Say hello to the trees for me. Thank you so
I
very
will. I
much.
will. I can show the trees to you if you would like. I did say at the beginning of the podcast. So let me just do a quick little so we're not disappointing your listeners here.
You're going there.
Um, and so
Oh,
there you
dear
are.
Lord. I knew it.
It's hard to see, but
Well,
there
now
they
you
are,
make me
all of the
cry.
trees. So nature is here for you. I'm going to
Thank you
share it
so
with
much.
you. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.